Welcome to Bad Gear, the show about the world's most hated audio tools, the JX-8P, Roland's last-ditch effort to battle Yamaha's FM dominance in a time when analog synths were deemed uncool and human-friendly UIs considered overrated. Today we are going to talk about the JX-08. This 2022 reincarnation of the probably last vintage analog poly to become vastly overpriced offers everything Bad Gear aficionados might wish for. The controversial boutique form factor, a fine selection of seemingly random limitations, and a digital synth engine that is widely regarded as a step backwards compared to earlier boutique models. It's a Roland.
At the first glance, the JX-08 is ticking all the boxes. Iconic color scheme, a best of PG800 programmer front panel, and a heavily downgraded display. Instead of the oftentimes frowned upon DCO-based oscillator section of the original, the boutique is based on Roland's ABM technology. While the ACB approach used in synths like the JX03 or JU06A aimed for a faithful emulation of the analog instrument at the cost of essential features like polyphony, this technique is more of an approximation similar to methods found in recent Roland Cloud products. Sure, the plain oscillator sound might be sufficiently authentic for most of us, but the Xmod sync section is missing the third option of combining the two, and there's no Unison detune. If you are on a heroic quest for ultimate authenticity, the filter will presumably be another deal breaker for you. Instead of a bit-by-bit reproduction of the much-appraised JX-8P circuit, the 08 offers 3 generic Synology models and the high-pass filter is now sweepable. The UI of the boutique is a real improvement over the stock original, but is missing a few amenities of the highly sought-after programmer, like dedicated controls for both envelopes and faders for the LFO. Speaking of the programmer, in case you planned to replace your PG800 with a JX08 or control the latter with the original synth, you will be disappointed! There's no SysX on the boutique and no control changes on the JX8P, so meaningful communication between the two is mostly limited to note data. There's also no patch compatibility whatsoever. Bummer. I do appreciate some of the more modern features of the 08 though. In addition to the great sounding chorus, Roland added a nice reverb, a multi-FX unit in more than decent quality, and it's great to have an analog clock in and an arpeggiator. Quite similar to the 1986 Super JX10, the unit is by Bitimbrality. And there are layers, splits, and a polyphonic 64-step sequencer with motion recording, for each of these independent engines. Polyphony seems to amount to a grand total of 20 voices. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room. Does it sound like the original? There are plenty of great comparisons on YouTube. First and foremost, Espen Craft's very detailed video comparing the Boutique not only to the original but also to a freeware plugin and a fictitious old lady. I do have a JX-8P here, and in my very unscientific opinion, the emulation behaves differently in too many ways to be described here. Apart from that, the JX08 comes with the usual idiosyncrasies associated with a product line like mini jacks, noisy USB power, drivers for USB MIDI, the much despised miniaturized form factor, and a fair bit of menu diving. Pricing is
not great, not terrible.
And thanks to Klangfarbe for lending me another synth from their shop floor.
Even fans of the Boutique range will have to admit that the JX08 isn't exactly a faithful emulation of the original. Is Roland able to nail the classic sound of the 80s, or is it just another digital synth?
You have already heard the Boutique in today's intro tune. I wouldn't call it authentic, but the friendly brutality of the 8P is there. Let's start this out with my usual 80s chord progression for Roland Polys.
Bass, a great selection of internal FX and easy to use multi-timbrality. Roland did a few things right here. Front panel controls are not as microscopic as on other boutiques, and although I've used more convenient UIs, the synth reacts to tweaks nicely. The original JX-8P is not exactly known to be the punchiest of all Roland synths. Time to give the internal sequencer a try and squeeze some more in-your-face sounds out of the Boutique. That's a pleasant surprise. I've always found the envelopes of the original to be a little too relaxed, and the 08 seems to provide more snap while retaining some of the 80s timbre. I wanna know if the synth is capable of producing more contemporary sound in this bassline driven and most probably inappropriately labeled deep house music. Those of you who have seen my JX8P episode will know that I'm not the biggest fan of the original. I appreciate the classy sheen and vintage vibe, but personally prefer more direct sounding instruments. I do like the Boutique version quite a bit though. While far from being an authentic emulation, its more modern overall timbre, spicier envelopes and additional features make it better suited for my workflow. However, it might be missing a certain magic and mystery for more traditional approaches. If Roland had released the JX08 as a brand new digital creation based on an analog history housed in a modern keyboard designed by Axel Hartmann, no one would have even bothered to unfavorably compare it to unique 80s classics. But I'm afraid Roland is just too busy chasing ghosts. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Feel free to like, subscribe, become a patron and leave a comment what other kind of gear you would like to see and hear on the show.